Show me what it's like to mate with humans, Vox demanded, her iridescent skin shimmering under the harsh lights of Nexus 7's diplomatic quarter. The stunningly beautiful Brunali female stood mere inches from Ryan Cooper, her otherworldly eyes boring into his with unnerving intensity. Ryan's jaw dropped. His mind raced, struggling to process the alien's bold request. As Earth's lead diplomat on the Interstellar Space Station, he'd encountered his fair share of cultural misunderstandings. But this was unprecedented. Before Ryan could formulate a response, klaxons blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights bathed the corridor in an ominous glow. A computerized voice crackled over the intercom. "Alert! Brunali Warfleet approaching. All personnel to battle stations." Chaos erupted. Humans and aliens alike scrambled for cover or their assigned posts. Ryan's shock at Vox's proposition gave way to a new, more urgent concern. Why were the Brunali, usually peaceful trading partners, approaching with a war fleet? His question was answered moments later when Admiral Zor's holographic visage materialized before them. The Brunali leader's face contorted with rage as he jabbed an accusing finger at Ryan. "You, human! You dare attempt to sexually assault my daughter?" Zor's voice boomed, echoing off the station's metal walls. "I demand your immediate arrest and surrender to Brunali authorities." Ryan's protests of innocence were drowned out by the whir of security drones surrounding him, their weapons trained on his chest. He looked to Vox for support, but the alien beauty remained silent, her expression unreadable. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, Station Commander Ilara Way pushed through the growing crowd. Her crisp uniform and authoritative presence parted the sea of onlookers. "Admiral Zor," Way addressed the hologram, her voice steady and diplomatic. "I assure you, there has been a misunderstanding. I propose a solution that will satisfy all parties and prevent unnecessary conflict." The Admiral's hologram flickered, his eyes narrowing. "Speak." Wedgie took a deep breath. "Diplomat Cooper will agree to Vox's request. He will demonstrate human mating practices, proving we are not the threat you believe us to be." Ryan's eyes widened in disbelief. Was Way really suggesting he mate with an alien to prevent interstellar war? The commander continued, her voice leaving no room for argument. "If Mr. Cooper refuses or fails to satisfy Vox, Earth will submit to immediate invasion by Brunali forces." A hush fell over the assembled crowd. Ryan felt the weight of humanity's fate settle on his shoulders. He swallowed hard, realizing his sexual performance could literally make or break Earth's future. I accept," Ryan stammered, acutely aware of the absurdity of the situation. As security drones escorted Ryan and Vox to a private chamber, whispers and worried glances followed them. Many humans feared Ryan's lack of experience with alien anatomy could doom their homeworld. Dr. Samantha Jenkins, the station's lead xenobiologist, rushed after them. "Ryan," she called out, pressed a data pad into his hands. "Crucial information on Brunali physiology. Study it. Earth is counting on you." Meanwhile, Admiral Zor's stern voice echoed from Vox's communicator. "Remember, daughter, human mating is primitive and brutal. Steel yourself for their barbaric practices." Ryan's mind reeled. The Brunali, with their painless genetic exchange, viewed human reproduction as violent. How could he possibly bridge this gap and satisfy Vox without horrifying her? As the door to the mating chamber hissed shut behind them, Ryan and Vox stood face to face. Both trembled with a mix of fear, anticipation, and the crushing weight of responsibility. Outside, humans and Brunali alike held their breath, knowing the next few hours would determine the future of interspecies relations, and potentially the very fate of Earth itself. As the door hissed shut behind them, Ryan and Vox found themselves alone in the mating chamber. The room, clearly designed for diplomatic encounters of this nature, boasted a large plush bed as its centerpiece. Various human amenities dotted the space, from mood lighting controls to a selection of refreshments. Ryan's heart raced, the weight of humanity's fate pressing down on him like a physical force. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. Across from him, Vox's earlier boldness had evaporated. The Brunali female trembled visibly, her iridescent skin flickering with what Ryan could only assume was fear. "Vox," Ryan began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know you're scared. I am too. But I promise I won't hurt you." Vox's otherworldly eyes locked onto his. "My father says human mating is violent and primitive. Is this true?" Ryan shook his head emphatically. "No, it's not. At least, it doesn't have to be. Human intimacy can be gentle, pleasurable for both parties. May I show you?" He extended his hand slowly, palm up. Vox eyed it warily, then took a hesitant step backward. "Please," Ryan said softly. "I'd like to start by simply holding your hand. Is that okay?" Vox's curiosity seemed to war with her apprehension. After a long moment, she gave a barely perceptible nod. Ryan approached carefully, telegraphing his movements. When he finally took Vox's hand in his, a jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them. Their eyes met, a spark of unexpected attraction flaring to life. The moment was shattered as the floor beneath them lurched. Suddenly, Ryan felt weightless. He and Vox began to drift upward, the artificial gravity seemingly offline. "What's happening?" Vox asked, panic edging into her voice. "It's okay," Ryan assured her, though his own heart was pounding. "Just a malfunction in the gravity systems. We're safe." Outside the chamber, alarms blared. Commander Wei's voice could be heard barking orders, working to contain the situation. Through the door, Ryan caught snippets of the chaos. "Engineering team to Deck 7, we need that gravity back online now. Admiral Zor is demanding updates. Someone get me a secure line." Ryan pushed the external tumult from his mind, focusing on the immediate challenge before him. He and Vox floated in the center of the room, their bodies drifting closer in the zero-gravity environment. "Well," Ryan said with a nervous chuckle, "this certainly complicates things." To his surprise, Vox let out a small laugh. The sound was melodic, almost chime-like. "Indeed it does, human." Ryan gently maneuvered them towards the bed, using it as an anchor in the weightless room. "Vox, I know this isn't what either of us expected, but maybe we can use this opportunity to learn about each other, to break down some of those preconceptions." Vox nodded slowly. "What did you have in mind?" "Well, for humans, intimacy often starts with touch, not just for procreation, but as a way to show affection and build trust. May I touch your face?" Vox hesitated, then nodded again. Ryan reached out, his fingers gently caressing her cheek. Her skin was smoother than he'd imagined, with a slight electric tingle that sent shivers down his spine. Vox's eyes widened at the contact. "That's pleasant," she murmured, surprise evident in her tone. Encouraged, Ryan continued, "Human intimacy isn't just physical, it's emotional too. We value trust, mutual pleasure, and connection." As they floated together, Ryan carefully explained more aspects of human affection. Vox listened intently, her fear gradually giving way to fascination. "Would you like to try a human kiss?" Ryan asked softly. Vox's skin shimmered with what Ryan now recognized as excitement. "Yes, I think I would." Ryan leaned in slowly, giving Vox time to pull away if she changed her mind. When their lips met, the sensation was unlike anything either had experienced. For Ryan, it was like kissing a living spark, exhilarating and slightly electric. For Vox, the soft warmth of human lips was a revelation. As they parted, both were breathless. Vox opened her mouth to speak, but at that moment the gravity abruptly returned. They fell ungracefully onto the bed, the sudden transition jarring them back to reality. Vox scrambled away, retreating to a corner of the room. Her earlier fear seemed to resurface, warring with the new sensations she'd just experienced. "Vox?" Ryan called softly, not daring to approach. "Are you all right?" The Brunali female hugged herself tightly. I don't know. This is all so confusing. You're not the barbarian I was told to expect, but..." Ryan's mind raced. He'd made progress, but now stood at a critical juncture. One wrong move could undo everything, potentially dooming Earth to war. He needed to regain Vox's trust, to continue their exploration of human intimacy. But how? As Ryan contemplated his next move, The hum of the station's systems seemed to grow louder, a reminder of the countless lives depending on the outcome of this unlikely encounter. Ryan took a deep breath, steadying himself. He knew he needed to regain Vox's trust, to bridge the gap that had suddenly opened between them. Slowly, deliberately, he approached her huddled form in the corner of the room. "Vox," he said softly, extending his hand. "I understand this is overwhelming, but I promise you, there's nothing to fear here." Vox's iridescent skin flickered with uncertainty as she eyed his outstretched palm. After a moment's hesitation, she uncurled slightly from her defensive posture. "You're truly not what I expected," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan offered a gentle smile. "Maybe that's a good thing. We have a chance to learn about each other, to break down those misconceptions." Slowly, cautiously, Vox reached out. As their hands touched, a jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them once more. But before either could fully process the sensation, the room's environmental controls suddenly went haywire. A loud hum filled the air as the temperature began to rise rapidly. Within seconds, beads of sweat formed on Ryan's brow. He saw Vox's skin begin to shimmer more intensely, reacting to the heat. "What's happening?" Vox asked, alarm creeping into her voice. Ryan wiped his forehead. "Some kind of malfunction. The room's getting too hot." The temperature continued to climb, quickly becoming unbearable. Ryan felt his shirt sticking to his skin, his breathing growing labored in the stifling air. "We need to cool down," he said, already reaching for the hem of his shirt. He paused, looking at Vox. "Is it okay if I remove some clothing? It's a human response to extreme heat." Vox nodded, her own discomfort evident. "Yes, I think I must do the same." Ryan peeled off his sweat-soaked shirt, revealing his toned torso. He couldn't help but watch as Vox began to remove the outer layer of her shimmering, form-fitting attire. As more of Vox's alien physique came into view, Ryan found himself captivated. Her skin seemed to pulse with an inner light, patterns of iridescence shifting across its surface. Where he expected to see a navel, there was instead a small, spiraling indentation. Vox, in turn, stared openly at Ryan's exposed chest. Her eyes traced the contours of his muscles, lingering on the light dusting of hair that was so alien to her own smooth skin. "Fascinating," she murmured, reaching out tentatively. "May I?" Ryan nodded, his breath catching as Vox's fingertips made contact with his chest. Her touch was electric, sending pleasant tingles across his skin. Remembering Dr. Jenkins's advice, Ryan gently grasped Vox's exploring hand. He guided it to a spot just below his collarbone, an area he knew to be particularly sensitive. Vox's eyes widened as she felt Ryan's sharp intake of breath. "Did I hurt you?" "No," Ryan assured her. "Just the opposite. That's a sensitive spot for humans. It feels good when touched." Understanding dawned in Vox's eyes. She began to explore more confidently, tracing patterns across Ryan's chest and abdomen. Each touch sent shivers of pleasure through him. Emboldened by Vox's curiosity, Ryan decided to reciprocate. "Can I touch you too?" he asked softly. Vox nodded, her skin pulsing with what Ryan now recognized as excitement. Carefully, Ryan ran his fingers along the spiraling indentation where a human navel would be. Vox gasped, her whole body seeming to vibrate at his touch. "That's intense," she breathed. Encouraged, Ryan continued his exploration. He discovered other areas that elicited strong reactions from Vox, particularly a series of small, bioluminescent dots along her spine. As they explored each other's bodies, the earlier tension melted away. Vox's initial fear transformed into eager curiosity. She began to initiate touches of her own, running her fingers through Ryan's hair and tracing the shell of his ear. "Your skin is so warm," Vox marveled. "And these textures, so different from Brunali." Ryan smiled, enjoying the sensation of Vox's explorations. "Different can be good," he said softly. Their eyes met, and suddenly the air between them seemed charged with more than just the room's malfunctioning climate controls. Vox leaned in closer, her breath mingling with Ryan's. "Show me more," she whispered. Ryan didn't need to be asked twice. He pulled Vox closer, capturing her lips in a deep, passionate kiss. Vox responded eagerly, her earlier hesitation completely forgotten. As their kisses grew more heated, Ryan's hands roamed Vox's body, finding new ways to elicit those small, pleasured gasps he was quickly becoming addicted to. Vox, in turn, grew bolder in her explorations, her touches becoming more purposeful as she learned what brought Ryan pleasure. Suddenly, Vox's body went rigid. Her skin pulsed with rapid flashes of light, and a sound somewhere between a gasp and a melodic chime escaped her lips. Ryan recognized it immediately. Vox was experiencing her first human-induced orgasm. As the sensation subsided, Vox looked at Ryan with wide, wonder-filled eyes. I've never felt anything like that before, she breathed. Ryan smiled, a mix of pride and affection swelling in his chest. That's just the beginning, he promised. Vox opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, a harsh beeping cut through the room. Commander Wei's voice crackled over the intercom, urgent and tense. Cooper, we have a situation. A group of rogue Brunali soldiers has infiltrated the station. They're headed your way, led by Commander Krell. Prepare for possible hostile contact. Ryan and Vox sprang apart, the spell of their intimate moment broken. As they hurried to dress, Vox's expression hardened with persistence. Krell, she spat the name like a curse. My former suitor. He never could accept my rejection. Ryan's mind raced as he pulled on his shirt. We need to be ready for anything. Vox, I know this isn't what you signed up for, but... Vox cut him off, grasping his hand firmly. I stand with you, Ryan. What we've shared, it's changed everything. I won't let Krell destroy the chance for peace between our people. As alarms blared throughout the station, Ryan and Vox positioned themselves near the chamber's entrance. They exchanged a look of shared perseverance, ready to face whatever came through that door. The sound of heavy footsteps and angry voices grew closer. Ryan's heart pounded, but he felt a strange calm knowing Vox was by his side. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Together. The door burst open with a resounding clang, revealing Commander Krell flanked by a group of armed Brunali soldiers. Their faces contorted with a mix of anger and disgust as they took in the scene before them. Ryan's diplomatic instincts kicked in immediately. He stepped forward, hands raised in a placating gesture. Commander Krell, let's talk about this. There's no need for violence. Krell's eyes narrowed, his gaze darting between Ryan and Vox. Silence, human filth! You've corrupted her with your primitive ways. He turned to his men, gesturing violently. Seize them both! Chaos erupted in the confined space. The rogue soldiers surged forward, energy weapons raised. Ryan's mind raced, searching for a way out of this seemingly impossible situation. Suddenly, Vox moved. Her body seemed to flow like liquid, bending and twisting in ways Ryan's human physiology could never achieve. She slipped effortlessly between two advancing soldiers, causing them to collide with each other. Inspired by Vox's display, Ryan sprang into action. He ducked under the arm of an approaching Brunali, using his momentum to flip the alien over his shoulder. The soldier's weapon clattered to the floor, and Ryan scooped it up in one fluid motion. Vox's voice rang out, high and urgent. Ryan, behind you! He spun, bringing the butt of the weapon up to connect with another soldier's jaw. The Brunali stumbled back, dazed. As they fought, Ryan marveled at how in sync he and Vox had become. Their movements complemented each other perfectly, as if they'd been training together for years instead of sharing a few intimate moments. The tide of the battle began to turn in their favor when a new commotion arose from the corridor. Admiral Zor's imposing figure filled the doorway, flanked by Commander Wei and a squad of loyalist Brunali troops. Stand down, Krell! Zor's voice boomed, cutting through the chaos. This madness ends now. Krell's face twisted with rage. You're too late, Admiral. Your daughter has already been tainted by these humans. Zor's eyes widened as he took in the scene. His daughter fighting alongside Ryan, their movements perfectly coordinated. Something shifted in the Admiral's expression, a flicker of doubt replacing his usual stern demeanor. Before anyone could react further, A stray energy blast from one of Krell's men hit the chamber's control panel. Sparks flew, and alarms began to blare with renewed intensity. Commander Wei's voice cut through the noise. The life support systems are failing. Oxygen levels are dropping rapidly. Ryan's mind raced. He knew the station's layout like the back of his hand. It was part of his mission prep. "We need to get to the emergency airlock on Deck 5, he shouted. "It's our best chance." Without hesitation, Vox grabbed her father's arm. "He's right. We have to move now." The disparate groups, humans and Brunali alike, found themselves united by the common threat. They raced through the corridors, the air growing thinner with each passing moment. As they rounded a corner, Ryan nearly collided with a familiar face. "Dr. Jenkins!" The xenobiologist looked frazzled but determined. "Ryan, thank goodness I found you. I've made a breakthrough in understanding Brunali physiology, their respiratory system." "Tell me as we run," Ryan interrupted, urging her to keep pace with the group. As they hurried towards the airlock, Dr. Jenkins quickly outlined her findings. The Brunali's unique biology made them more susceptible to oxygen deprivation than humans. The information sent a chill down Ryan's spine as he glanced at Vox, already noticing her labored breathing. They reached the airlock, but victory was short-lived. The control panel flashed an angry red, unresponsive to their commands. "It's jammed," Commander Wei announced, her voice tight with tension. Ryan locked eyes with Vox, a silent understanding passing between them. Without a word, they moved to opposite sides of the airlock door. Ryan braced himself against the wall, fingers searching for the manual override panel he knew was hidden there. Vox, understanding his intent, used her superior flexibility to reach into a narrow gap, feeling for the emergency release mechanism. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, each anticipating the other's needs. With a final push and pull, the airlock door creaked open. As the group began to file in, a shout rang out from behind them. Commander Krell, having broken free in the chaos, lunged for the airlock controls. "If I can't have her, no one will," he snarled, his fingers flying over the keypad. Vox stepped forward, her posture radiating a newfound confidence. "Krell, stop this madness. Look around you. Humans and Brunali working together to survive. This is the future, not more hatred and violence." Krell hesitated, his hand hovering over the final button that would expose them all to the vacuum of space. His eyes darted from face to face, taking in the united front before him. The moment stretched, oxygen levels plummeting. Ryan knew they were out of time. In a split-second decision, he activated his emergency oxygen supply, quickly modifying it to work for the Brunali. He handed it first to Vox, then to Admiral Zor, prioritizing their safety over his own. The selfless act didn't go unnoticed. Admiral Zor's eyes widened in surprise, then understanding. He nodded solemnly at Ryan, a gesture that spoke volumes. With oxygen levels critical and time running out, the group faced their final challenge. The airlock's emergency protocols needed to be initiated, a complex process that required perfect timing and cooperation. Ryan and Vox took charge, their earlier intimacy translating into an unspoken bond. They directed the mixed team of humans and Brunali, each person playing a crucial role in the delicate operation. As the final sequence was input, Ryan met Vox's gaze. In that moment, all the barriers between their species seemed to fall away. They were no longer human and Brunali, but two beings united in their fight for survival and understanding. The airlock sealed with a hiss, emergency protocols engaging. As the recycled air began to flow, the group held their collective breath, waiting to see if their combined efforts would be enough to save them all. In the tense silence, Ryan reached out, his fingers intertwining with Vox's. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, a living symbol of the potential for peace and cooperation between their peoples. People. As the recycled air filled their lungs, a collective sigh of relief rippled through the group. The immediate danger had passed, but they were far from safe. Ryan's hand tightened around Vox's as he surveyed their surroundings. The airlock was cramped, barely accommodating their mixed group of humans and Brunali. Admiral Zor stood tall, his imposing figure a stark contrast to the disheveled Commander Krell, who sat slumped against the wall, defeat etched across his features. Commander Wei and Dr. Jenkins huddled near the control panel, their faces taut with concern. "The station's life support systems are still offline," Commander Wei reported, her fingers dancing across the flickering display. "We can't safely re-enter the main areas until they're restored." Ryan's mind raced, analyzing their options. He knew the station's layout intimately, a crucial part of his mission preparation. An idea formed. Dangerous, but potentially their only chance. "We need to reach the central control room," he announced, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "From there, we can manually reset the life support systems." Dr. Jenkins frowned. "But how? The corridors are compromised." Ryan took a deep breath. "We go outside. Use the emergency spacesuits to traverse the station's exterior." A tense silence fell over the group as they processed his words. Vox's skin pulsed with a mix of fear and grit, her bioluminescent spots flickering rapidly. Commander Wei moved to a nearby storage unit, her movements quick and efficient. "We have 3 functional suits," she reported, her voice tight. "That's all." The implications hung heavy in the air. They would have to choose who would undertake this perilous mission. What followed was an intense debate, each person arguing their case. Ryan insisted on going, citing his knowledge of the station. Vox refused to be left behind, her newly formed bond with Ryan giving her courage. Admiral Zor's tactical expertise made him a valuable asset. In the end, the decision was made. Ryan, Vox, and Admiral Zor would attempt the exterior journey, balancing human and Brunali representation. As they donned the bulky spacesuits, Ryan noticed Vox's hands trembling. Her breathing quickened, eyes wide with barely concealed panic. "Hey," he said softly, reaching out to steady her hands. "Remember earlier? When we explored each other, learned to trust?" Vox nodded, her skin pulsing with a soft, calming light. "This is just like that," Ryan continued, his voice low and soothing. "We're exploring something new together. I've got you, just like before." The fear in Vox's eyes receded, replaced by willpower. She squeezed Ryan's hand through the thick glove of the spacesuit. Admiral Zor watched this exchange, his expression unreadable behind his helmet's faceplate. With a hiss of depressurization, the airlock's outer door slid open. The vastness of space yawned before them, a tapestry of stars punctuated by the curved horizon of the planet below. Ryan took point, leading their tethered trio out into the void. The station's hull stretched out beneath their feet, a maze of metal and shadow. They moved carefully, each step measured and deliberate in the zero-gravity environment. Halfway to their destination, Ryan's breath caught in his throat. A field of debris floated before them, remnants of a recent meteor shower. Jagged chunks of rock and metal drifted lazily in their path. "We need to change course," Admiral Zor's voice crackled through the comm system. "This debris field is too dangerous to traverse." Ryan's mind raced, calculating trajectories and safe paths. "There," he said, pointing to a narrow gap between 2 large pieces of debris. "We can make it through there, but it'll be tight." Vox moved forward, her natural agility translating surprisingly well to the zero-G environment. "I can guide us through," she said, her voice steady with newfound confidence. They maneuvered through the debris field, a delicate dance of precision and trust. Ryan's quick thinking and Vox's graceful movements complemented each other perfectly, while Admiral Zor provided strategic guidance from the rear. Just as they cleared the last of the debris, a sharp crack echoed through their comm system. Vox gasped, her hand flying to her side. "Vox!" Ryan's voice was tight with concern. "What's wrong?" "My suit," she replied, her words strained. "Something hit it. There's a small puncture." Ryan's heart raced as he saw the telltale wisps of escaping oxygen. Without hesitation, he reached for the emergency connection between their suits. "I'm linking our oxygen supplies," he explained, his fingers working quickly to connect the tubes. "We'll share mine." Admiral Zor watched this exchange, his earlier skepticism visibly softening. As they neared the control room's exterior access point, a new challenge presented itself. The access panel had been damaged, warped, and jammed by the meteor shower. "We need to force it open," Ryan said, examining the damage. "But it's going to take all of us." What followed was a testament to their newfound cooperation. Ryan's technical knowledge guided them, Vox's flexibility allowed her to reach the most difficult spots, and Admiral Zor's strength provided the necessary force. Together, they managed to pry the panel open, revealing the airlock beyond. Once inside the control room, they were met with a sea of flashing lights and blaring alarms. Ryan quickly assessed the situation, his training kicking in. The system needs simultaneous activation from 3 terminals, he explained, gesturing to the consoles spread across the room. We each need to take one. They moved to their positions, the weight of their task hanging heavy in the air. Just as they prepared to initiate the reset, a new alarm cut through the cacophony. Warning, critical failure in orbital stabilizers detected, an automated voice announced. Station orbit decay imminent. The trio froze, the implications of this new threat sinking in. They now faced an impossible choice: restore life support for those trapped in the airlock, or prevent the station from potentially crashing into the planet below. Ryan's eyes met Vox's across the room, then shifted to Admiral Zor. In that moment, the barriers between them seemed to dissolve. They were no longer human, and Brunali, diplomat, and alien, but 3 beings united by crisis and trust. Their hands hovered over the activation panels, the fate of everyone on the station hanging in the balance. The choice before them would shape not just their personal relationships, but the future of human-Brunali relations. As the alarms blared and the station shuddered around them, Ryan took a deep breath. Whatever they decided, he knew one thing for certain: they would face the consequences together. Together. The weight of their decision pressed down on them like a physical force. Ryan's fingers hovered over the activation panel, his eyes darting between Vox and Admiral Zor. In that moment of crisis, a wordless understanding passed between them. With a collective nod, they made their choice. Initiating orbit stabilization protocols, Ryan announced, his voice steady despite the gravity of their decision. Their hands moved in unison, inputting the complex sequence required to realign the station's position. The control room vibrated around them as massive thrusters engaged, fighting against the pull of the planet below. Vox's bioluminescent spots pulsed rapidly, her alien features contorted with concentration. Orbit trajectory stabilizing, she reported, her eyes fixed on the readouts before her. Admiral Zor's massive frame hunched over his console, his usually stoic expression betraying a hint of strain. Power levels critical, he growled. We're pushing the systems to their limits. As they worked, the strain on the station's overtaxed systems became evident. Lights flickered ominously, and distant creaks and groans echoed through the structure. Suddenly, a series of alarms blared to life, their urgent wails adding to the cacophony. Power failures detected throughout the station, the computer's emotionless voice announced. Emergency protocols engaged. Ryan's heart sank as he watched status indicators across his screen flash from green to red. The force fields are activating, he said, his voice tight. They're sealing off sections to preserve atmosphere. Vox's head snapped up, her eyes wide with realization. The airlock, she gasped. The others... Her words were cut off as the communication panel erupted in a shower of sparks. The line to the airlock went dead, leaving them in eerie silence save for the persistent alarms. Admiral Zor's massive hand came down on his console with a resounding thud. We've lost contact with Commander Wei and the others, he said, his tone grim. They're trapped. The weight of their decision pressed down on Ryan with renewed force. They had chosen to save the station at the cost of leaving their companions in peril. He pushed the guilt aside, focusing on the task at hand. Orbit stabilization complete, he announced after several tense minutes. We've averted an immediate crash, but we're far from safe. Vox moved to the life support controls, her fingers dancing across the panel. Her face fell as she absorbed the information before her. The life support systems are beyond our ability to repair from here, she said, her voice heavy with defeat. We need to reach the engineering deck. Ryan's mind raced, recalling the station's layout. The main route will be blocked, he said, thinking aloud. We'll have to use the maintenance tunnels and backup corridors. Admiral Zor nodded grimly. A perilous journey, he said, but our only option. As they prepared to leave the relative safety of the control room, Ryan noticed Vox fidgeting with her suit. A thin wisp of vapor escaped from the puncture in her side, a stark reminder of their dwindling time. "Oxygen levels at 60%, Vox reported, her voice tight with terrifying fear. Ryan moved to her side, quickly connecting their suits once more. "We'll share," he said firmly, leaving no room for argument. "We're in this together." The trio set out into the damaged corridors of Nexus 7, each step a calculated risk. They moved through narrow maintenance shafts and backup passages, their progress slowed by debris and sealed bulkheads. As they navigated a particularly tight junction, a muffled cry caught their attention. Ryan peered through a small viewport, his heart clenching at the sight. A group of crew members, both human and Brunali, were trapped in a sealed compartment, their oxygen visibly depleting. "We have to help them," Vox said, her voice filled with urgency. Admiral Zor's expression hardened. "Our oxygen supplies are limited," he reminded them. "Saving them could jeopardize our mission to restart the reactor." Ryan felt the weight of leadership settle on his shoulders. He looked at the desperate faces beyond the glass, then back at his companions. "We can't leave them," he said firmly. "We'll find a way." Using their combined strength and ingenuity, they managed to create a small opening in the sealed hatch. One by one, they helped the trapped crew members into the relative safety of the maintenance shaft. As the last of them squeezed through, Ryan felt a surge of hope. Perhaps they could save everyone after all. Their progress slowed with the additional survivors, but Ryan refused to regret their decision. They continued their arduous journey, each section of the station presenting new challenges. Vacuum-exposed areas forced them to take long detours, and failing systems threatened to trap them at every turn. As they neared the engineering deck, Vox stumbled, her breathing labored. Ryan was at her side in an instant, his arm supporting her slender frame. "The suit," she gasped, her bioluminescent spots flickering weakly. "It's failing." Without hesitation, Ryan increased the flow of oxygen from his suit to hers. "Just a little further," he encouraged, ignoring the warning lights on his own display. Admiral Zor watched this exchange, his expression unreadable behind his faceplate. Yet something in his posture had changed, a newfound respect evident in the way he regarded the human and Brunali working together. They finally reached the engineering deck, only to find it in chaos. The main reactor loomed before them, dark and silent. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of burning electronics. Ryan surveyed the scene, his diplomatic training kicking in. He quickly organized the survivors into teams, pairing humans with Brunali based on their complementary skills. "We need to restart the reactor," he shouted over the din of alarms. "It's our only chance to restore life support across the station." As they worked feverishly to bring the reactor online, a sudden power surge ripped through the deck. An auxiliary power unit exploded in a blinding flash, the shockwave throwing them off their feet. Ryan scrambled to his knees, his ears ringing from the blast. His heart stopped as he saw Vox lying motionless nearby, her suit badly damaged and leaking oxygen at an alarming rate. Without a second thought, Ryan began removing his own suit. Admiral Zor's massive hand clamped down on his arm. "What are you doing?" the Brunali leader demanded. "Saving her," Ryan replied, his voice leaving no room for argument. He quickly transferred his suit to Vox's unconscious form, sealing it as best he could. As the last reserves of oxygen left his lungs, Ryan felt his vision begin to darken. He looked up at Admiral Zor, a silent plea in his eyes. Save her. Save them all. To Ryan's shock, the imposing Brunali leader knelt beside him. "There is a way," Zor said, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and perseverance. "A Brunali technique, a sharing of life support." Ryan's oxygen-deprived mind struggled to comprehend as Admiral Zor initiated a procedure unlike anything he had ever seen. He felt a strange sensation, as if his very cells were linking with the Brunali's. Gradually, his lungs began to fill with precious air. As Ryan's consciousness returned, he marveled at the unprecedented act of trust between their species, human and Brunali, linked in a literal symbiosis, working together to save them all. With renewed strength, they turned their attention back to the reactor. The mixed team of engineers worked in perfect harmony, human ingenuity complementing Brunelli biological interfaces. Slowly, steadily, the massive reactor core began to hum with life. As systems across the station began to flicker back to life, Ryan allowed himself a moment of relief. But it was short-lived. A violent shudder ran through the deck, reminding them of the station's compromised structural integrity. Alarms blared anew, warning of multiple hull breaches and the risk of catastrophic decompression. Ryan looked at the still unconscious Vox, then at Admiral Zor, their life forces still intertwined. "We need to reach the command center," Ryan said, his voice filled with drive. "We have to coordinate an evacuation." As they prepared to navigate the treacherous path to the command center, Ryan knew that the true test of their newfound alliance was yet to come. The fate of everyone aboard Nexus 7 hung in the balance, as did the future of human-Brunelli relations. With Vox cradled in his arms and Admiral Zor by his side, Ryan stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Ryan stepped into the unknown, the station shuddered violently. Alarms blared with renewed urgency, and the deck beneath their feet groaned ominously. The path to the command center, once a routine journey, had become a treacherous obstacle course. "Emergency bulkheads activating," Nexus announced, its synthetic voice echoing through the corridors. "Please proceed to designated safe zones." Ryan watched in dismay as massive metal barriers slammed into place, sealing off their planned route. He glanced at Admiral Zor, still connected to him through their unprecedented symbiosis, and then at the unconscious Vox in his arms. "We need to find another way," Ryan said, his voice strained. Despite the Brunelli leader's support, he could feel his strength waning. The shared life support was a temporary measure at best. Admiral Zor nodded grimly. "There's a maintenance shaft 2 sections over. It's risky, but it might be our only option." They set off, navigating through a labyrinth of twisted metal and sparking circuitry. The station's structural integrity was failing faster than Ryan had anticipated. Every few meters they encountered new obstacles: collapsed beams, ruptured conduits spewing coolant, and pockets of near vacuum where hull breaches had been hastily sealed. As they squeezed through a particularly narrow passage, Ryan felt a sudden wave of dizziness. He stumbled, nearly dropping Vox. Admiral Zor caught them both, his massive frame providing much-needed support. "Your condition is deteriorating," the Brunelli leader observed, his tone permeated with concern. "We must hurry." They pressed on, the journey to the command center becoming a brutal test of endurance. Ryan's vision blurred, his lungs burning despite the shared life support. He focused on putting one foot in front of the other, driven by the weight of Vox in his arms and the knowledge that failure meant death for everyone aboard Nexus 7. After what felt like hours, they finally reached the command center. The scene that greeted them was one of utter chaos. Consoles sparked and smoked, holographic displays flickered with distorted emergency warnings, and the few crew members present moved with frantic urgency. "Status report," Ryan called out, his voice hoarse. A young human ensign turned, her eyes widening at the sight of the battered trio. "Sir, Nexus has initiated emergency protocols. It's preparing to jettison damaged sections of the station." Ryan's heart sank as he processed the information. "How many crew members are in those sections?" The ensign's face paled. "Hundreds, sir. Maybe more." Without hesitation, Ryan moved to the central console, gently laying Vox down beside it. He interfaced with Nexus, his fingers flying over the controls as he assessed the situation. "Nexus," he addressed the AI directly, "delay the jettison sequence. That's a direct order." There was a pause. Then the AI's voice responded, "Negative. Structural integrity critical. Jettison sequence is necessary to preserve core systems." Ryan's mind raced, searching for alternatives. His gaze fell on a secondary console, one he knew controlled the station's experimental systems. A risky idea formed in his mind. "Nexus, what about the teleportation system?" he asked. "Could we use it to evacuate the endangered sections?" Another pause. "The teleportation system is untested for organic matter transport. Risk of molecular destabilization, 89.7%. Ryan looked at Admiral Zor, still connected to him through their symbiotic link. He could feel the Brunali leader's thoughts, a mixture of concern and grudging admiration for the human's audacity. "It's our only chance," Ryan said, both to Zor and to himself. He turned back to the AI. "Nexus, I'm overriding your protocols. Delay the jettison sequence and prepare the teleportation system for mass evacuation." As Ryan worked to modify the teleportation protocols, he felt a surge of energy flow through him. Admiral Zor had placed his hand on the console, using his emergency override to grant Ryan full control of the station's systems. "You have earned this trust, human," Zor said, his voice filled with newfound respect. "Now save our people." With full access to Nexus, Ryan's efforts to stabilize the teleportation system accelerated. He was so engrossed in his work that he almost missed the soft groan beside him. Vox was stirring, her bioluminescent spots pulsing weakly as she regained consciousness. "Ryan?" she murmured, her alien features contorting in confusion. "What's happening?" As Ryan quickly explained the situation, he noticed something odd about Vox's appearance. The human spacesuit she wore seemed to have melded with her Brunali physiology, creating an unexpected fusion of technologies. "Fascinating," Vox said, examining her altered form. "My body appears to have adapted to the suit's systems. This could be crucial for stabilizing the teleportation process for both species." With Vox's insights and Admiral Zor's continued support, Ryan fine-tuned the teleportation parameters. The station shuddered around them, a constant reminder of the ticking clock they faced. "Teleportation grid online," Nexus announced. "Warning, power levels critical." Ryan's heart sank. They had a way to save the crew, but not enough power to execute it. He turned to his companions, commitment etched on his face. "We need to manually reroute power from non-essential systems," he said. "It's going to be dangerous. We'll have to navigate through some of the most damaged areas of the station." Vox stood, her newly adapted suit glowing faintly. "Then we'd better get started." As they prepared to venture back into the hazardous corridors of Nexus 7, Ryan felt a mix of fear and willpower. The station was falling apart around them, but the bonds between human and Brunali had never been stronger. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Together. As they stepped out of the command center, the gravity of their situation hit Ryan with full force. The station was dying around them, and they were about to embark on a desperate mission to save everyone aboard. "We need to split up," Ryan said, his voice hoarse but determined. "We'll cover more ground that way." Vox nodded, her newly adapted suit pulsing with a soft, bioluminescent glow. "I'll take the port side. My enhanced physiology should help me navigate the more damaged areas." Admiral Zor, still connected to Ryan through their symbiotic link, spoke up. "I will handle the starboard sections. My knowledge of Brunali systems will be crucial in those areas." Ryan felt a surge of admiration for his companions. Despite their differences, they were united in their goal. "I'll focus on the central spine. We'll meet back here in 30 minutes, no matter what." As they parted ways, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that this might be the last time they saw each other. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task at hand. The central spine of Nexus 7 was a nightmare of twisted metal and sparking circuitry. Ryan navigated through collapsed bulkheads and around pockets of vacuum, his every movement a calculated risk. He worked feverishly, rerouting power conduits and bypassing damaged systems. Time seemed to blur as Ryan pushed himself to the limit. His lungs burned, and his muscles screamed in protest, but he refused to slow down. Lives depended on his success. As he worked, Ryan became acutely aware of the symbiotic link with Admiral Zor. He could sense the Brunali leader's commitment, his strength flowing through their connection. It gave Ryan the push he needed to keep going. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the station. Ryan lost his footing, slamming hard against a bulkhead. Pain exploded in his side, and he tasted blood in his mouth. Gritting his teeth, he forced himself back to his feet. "Nexus," he called out. "Status report." The AI's voice crackled through a nearby speaker. "Structural integrity at 12% and falling. Reactor core approaching critical levels. Estimated time to catastrophic failure, 15 minutes. Ryan's heart raced. They were running out of time. He redoubled his efforts, ignoring the pain that lanced through his body with every movement. As he neared the command center, Ryan heard the sound of running footsteps. Vox appeared around a corner, her adapted suit glowing brightly. She looked battered but determined. "Ryan," she called out, relief evident in her voice. "I've managed to reroute power from the auxiliary systems. It should give us a significant boost." Before Ryan could respond, Admiral Zor's massive form emerged from another corridor. "I've secured additional power from the Brunali sections," he reported. "It's not much, but it might be enough." The trio rushed back into the command center, where chaos still reigned. Ryan immediately set to work, his fingers flying over the console as he integrated the newly available power into the teleportation grid. "Nexus," he commanded. "Begin final evacuation sequence. Teleport all remaining crew members to the safety of the waiting ships." The AI's response was immediate. "Acknowledged. Initiating mass teleportation. Warning. Power levels critical. System instability detected." Ryan watched as the first group of crew members vanished in a flash of light. His heart soared with hope. But it was short-lived. A massive power surge ripped through the system, threatening to overload the teleportation grid. "No!" Ryan shouted, frantically trying to stabilize the power flow. But it was too much. The surge was going to destroy the grid before they could evacuate everyone. Suddenly, Vox stepped forward. "I can stabilize it," she said, her voice filled with willpower. Without waiting for a response, she placed her hands on the console. Ryan watched in awe as Vox's body began to glow even brighter. The power surge flowed into her, and she channeled it, using her Brunali adaptability to regulate the energy flow. Her face contorted in pain, but she didn't falter. With the grid stabilized, the evacuation continued. Group after group of crew members teleported to safety. Ryan worked tirelessly, coordinating with Nexus to ensure no one was left behind. As the last group prepared to teleport, a deafening explosion rocked the station. Alarms blared with renewed urgency. "Reactor core breach imminent," Nexus announced. "Evacuate immediately." Ryan looked at Vox and Admiral Zor, the weight of their situation crushing down on him. They had saved the crew, but at what cost? There was no time for them to teleport to safety. "We need to get to an escape pod," Ryan said, his voice barely audible over the station's death throes. They ran, navigating through corridors that were literally falling apart around them. Debris rained down, and entire sections of the station were torn away, exposing them to the void of space. Finally, they reached the last functional escape pod. Ryan's heart sank as he realized the cruel twist of fate they faced. The pod only had life support for 2. Without hesitation, Ryan moved to push Vox and Admiral Zor inside. "Go," he said, his voice breaking. "I'll find another way." But Vox refused to budge. "No," she said firmly. "We're not leaving you behind." Her eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "The symbiotic fusion technique. We can use it to sustain all 3 of us." Admiral Zor nodded, understanding immediately. "It's risky, but it might work." As the station began to break apart around them, Ryan, Vox, and Zor huddled together. They initiated the symbiotic link, their bodies and minds merging in an unprecedented fusion of human and Brunali biology. The sensation was unlike anything Ryan had ever experienced. He could feel Vox's love and commitment flowing through him, intertwined with Admiral Zor's strength and wisdom. They were no longer 3 separate beings, but one unified consciousness. Together, they entered the escape pod. As the hatch sealed behind them, Ryan caught one last glimpse of Nexus 7 through the viewport. The station, once a symbol of interstellar cooperation, was now nothing more than a brilliant explosion against the backdrop of space. The pod launched, hurtling away from the disintegrating station. Inside, Ryan, Vox, and Zor remained locked in their symbiotic embrace, their combined life force sustaining them as they drifted through the vastness of space. Ryan's mind swam with a torrent of thoughts and emotions, not all of them his own. He could feel Vox's love for him, deeper and more profound than he had ever imagined. He sensed Admiral Zor's growing understanding of human emotions, the Brunali leader's perspective shifting as he experienced the depth of Ryan and Vox's bond firsthand. As they floated towards the rescue fleet, their merged consciousness worked to process the events that had led them to this point. Ryan realized that this unique symbiosis was more than just a means of survival. It was a new form of understanding between their species, one that could change the course of human-Brunali relations forever. The pod's communication system crackled to life, breaking through Ryan's reverie. "This is the UES Horizon," a voice announced. "We've locked onto your pod and are bringing you in. Hold tight." As the rescue ship's tractor beam engaged, Ryan felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Their ordeal was nearly over, but what would happen when they were separated? Would the profound connection they had forged survive? The pod shuddered as it was drawn into the Horizon's docking bay. Through their shared consciousness, Ryan, Vox, and Zor braced themselves for what was to come. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Their unprecedented bond, a testament to the power of unity in the face of adversity.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.